In today's episode on the TDSM podcast, we have Julie from Gold City Ventures. Julie has a super inspirational story to share with us today as she built her business not only having a full-time job, but also a newborn, and still managed to build one of the biggest Etsy communities that exist today. In her program, she has taught thousands of sellers how to build successful digital download businesses. So in this episode, we're not only going to hear about her truly inspirational story as a new mom trying to build a business at the same time and working a full-time job, but she's going to give you a bunch of practical tips on how to launch your Etsy digital download business for 2025. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
All righty. And welcome, Julie, to the TDSM podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
You are the master of the digital space. And so we are just really excited to hop in digital. Getting into the digital space on Etsy specifically is something that I wish I got into. You know, always being handmade. I look back and I'm like, man, if I would have tapped into some of that, my life would be way easier. So I know that you are a wealth of knowledge. You have been in this space for how many years now?
Oh, since 2017.
2017. So you're just a wealth of knowledge in the space. Not to mention you run arguably one of the biggest educational communities with primarily digital, but also serving all different types of sellers in the handmade space and the print on demand space. So, you know, you have your data selling of your experience on Etsy, but you also have thousands and thousands of case studies under your belt. So, how did you get into the Etsy space?
Well, we have to flash back. So I'm in my 30s now, but back when I was in my 20s, I worked in tech and I was at Amazon and Apple, kind of living the tech life, thinking that I was going to go this path forever. And then I heard about the concept of financial independence, retire early. It's the FIRE movement. And the idea of retiring in my 30s so that I could spend my weekends hiking and traveling and doing all these amazing things, learning new skills. It just sounded awesome to me. Now I have 2 little kids and I spend my weekends going to pumpkin patches. That's the reality. But it's nice that I achieved some semblance of this flexible lifestyle that I'd wanted. And eventually I had started my Etsy shop, left tech, and then started Gold City Ventures, which is the seller education piece that you talked about back in 2019, and never looked back.
Wow. And you have a business partner as well that helps you run that.
Yes. So Cody Berman is my business partner. We're not married. Some people think that. You thought that too when we first met. I'm like, definitely not. But we were kind of co-podcast hosts in the same space. We would interview people that did retire early, and we interviewed each other and realized like, oh, there's so many synergies here. We went to college in the same town and said, let's start our own kind of thing together. We were both doing side hustles, selling on Amazon, Etsy in the e-com space. So came together to launch Gold City Ventures, and that's the program and community that we joined. We've had over 20,000 students. We have 4,000 regular monthly members, and we focus pretty much entirely on selling printables and digital products.
Wow. Okay, a lot of questions there. But first question, actually, I have for you, which is a little bit off topic, but in terms of your partnership, just because I've seen a lot of sellers, you know, start via a partner and then it doesn't work out. So the fact that you guys have been partners for so many years, you know, I always tell people, like, if you have a business partner, it's like a marriage. It's like more than a marriage. Like you talk to them more than your literal partner. So how have you guys managed to have such a successful partnership for now, like almost over a half a decade? It is more than it.
I know. And any other business I start, I'm like, I got to cut Cody in because he's just truly incredible. But that being said, I've had so many business partnerships go south and continue to go south when I've tried to work with others. So there's really that blend of compatibility that needs to be there. And it doesn't go by your identity. Like, for example, when I met Cody, I was just about to turn 30. I was 5 months pregnant with our first kid. And Cody was just graduated college. He was like 23 years old or something. And most people might not have thought, oh, here's these 2 people are going to work together and create this business, right? But it doesn't really matter like what someone's identity is and what your identity is if you both have the same working styles, same communication styles. And at the end of the day, there's like a drive and like quest for greatness, you know, ambition that has to be there, because I've tried in the past with other people and either we didn't have the same way of working, which Cody and I have a very modern tech way of working, which for me, having worked at Apple and Amazon, all these places, I'm used to like getting on Slack and doing things very computery, kind of behind the scenes, trying to be sparing with how many calls you jump on, all of that idea, using project management things. That is not the way that other people really want to work. And Cody and I both want to work that way. So that works. We don't want to have meetings just to have meetings. We're like very focused. That works. And then the other element of it, just the ambition and drive, like how hard are you willing to work? What will you do what it takes to kind of get something to the next level? He will, and I know I will.
For sure. What is like the biggest red flag of someone? Like if you're in a partnership right now, what is like the biggest red flag? Like you should probably cut it before it gets any worse or money is lost.
I think there's two sort of things. Like one of it is honest communication and direct honest communication, I would say. And then two, like conflicts of interest. That's another thing. So all of us have multiple businesses and we prioritize some businesses over other businesses, or we may have competing businesses. It's kind of a lot when you're starting a new partnership to say, oh, you need to sign a non-compete and like this is what we're going to give our everything to. But that can be a red flag when you're starting a business. If and to no fault of the other person's own, it's just that they have this other huge thing that they're focusing on, and you're trying to bring some other huge thing to their attention. It's not always going to work, and that has happened to us too, where we need to really focus on something for Gold City Ventures, and we've tried to dabble in another thing, and we just hadn't had the time or the focus because we need to keep our eye on the main thing. So I would say, what else does that person have on their plate, and can they take on this level of partnership? And is it both the same level of priority for both of you?
That's super helpful because I've definitely talked to a lot of students that when they explain to me their partnership or why they're going into a partnership, it's like already giving me red flags because ultimately, I don't know if you agree with this, but like your partner should have the same work ethic, have the same values, right? Everything that you said, but also in a way, they bring a different value than you. It's really hard for partnerships to be successful if you guys are the same, right? Like if you are operations, then there's like a visionary, or if there is a visionary, you're the operations, right? You're not bringing the same value. You want someone that's bringing a different plate to the table, basically.
Yes, like 100%. So I used to work at Amazon and there's something called the leadership principles. And I think of them all the time, but Cody, his is bias for action. And that's how at Amazon, we all would like use these buzzwords to talk to each other. And my husband didn't work at Amazon and I like was friends with all Amazon people. My sister worked there and we would just use these things and he'd be like, oh my goodness, can you please stop like saying leadership principles? But it's so true. But Cody has bias for action, which means he doesn't delay and he just gets things launched. So you can imagine, for me, my strength, I'm insist on the highest standards. And I am like a super direct communicator. So for me, like I could delay something because I want it to be perfect. Whereas Cody, he can launch something so fast so we can benefit from the revenue and the changes and the feedback right away, but it might not be perfect. So the two of us kind of come together where I'm like the quality assurance checker, where I'm going through making sure everything is like the way it needs to be, and he's getting it done. And I think for me too, being a mom, like we started, I was pregnant. I have 2 kids now. There's a huge benefit to partnering with someone who's not in this life stage too. Just being real. Like when I was pregnant the second time, I unexpectedly had like really bad nausea and I couldn't even text somebody for 3 months. So how am I supposed to run a huge 7-figure business without even being able to send a text message, right? But that's where I had a business partner who completely covered for me and had my back. And he's not gonna, his personality is so awesome. He's not going to hold the tit for tat of like, oh, you took off 3 months and where have you been and blah, blah, blah. Like he's just the best person ever. So yeah, so we constantly complement each other. And I think me having that background, like that type A, the way I was a project manager at Amazon and Apple, like that, it really helps too. But Cody is the super chill, doesn't delay, nothing bothers him and get it done type business partner. So I think you're dead on with that.
I love that. I love that. Really good, big takeaways there for anyone considering a partnership, because partnerships can work out really, really well, but they can make you way more money than you ever imagined, or could go the reverse.
Yes.
But going back into more of the digital space. So, I mean, you have seen everything in the terms of probably selling digital assets from your students, from your own experience. I guess moving into 2025, what is like the hottest, I don't know, best-selling, most profitable, this is a very loaded question, avenue in the digital download space that you're currently seeing?
I think there's two main things. The first thing is that we try to encourage newer people to sell seasonally. And the reason for that is that they need that first feedback that they are onto something or they're not. And I think the first couple products that you do, they're not going to be of the best quality and they're probably not going to be your ringers. So you need to get through and get things out and figure out what's going to sell and what's not going to sell. And then often when you're selling products for holidays, the design standards are a little somewhat lower depending on what you're selling. I mean, if it's a wedding thing, then no, or wall art. But more of these printable digital products, the design standards are not as high for those. And if you sell seasonally, we've seen many students. So some people come in, they don't want to do it. They're like, I don't want to do this. But then when they ultimately switch to selling seasonally, they make sales sooner and they get that feedback loop. So we're not saying you're going to make $1 million selling seasonal products. You could, but you're probably not. But you're going to learn the foundational skills of selling on Etsy, from listing images, from keywords, from product creation, everything, the whole thing. You're going to learn that just so much faster. And then you can go on and find your super profitable business to business niche where you can charge $36 for a bundle and all that. But it just probably you don't jump right to there at the beginning. So I would say seasonal. And then the second thing is just like anything, personalized. Even in the printable space, actually, more and more, we're just seeing people want personalized stuff.
Wow. Okay. I really like that. I never thought of it like being someone that never sold in the seasonal space, but I really like that because exactly what you just said, which I never really knew how to convey, but like there's so much confidence that comes, like your momentum, your confidence, everything changes when you finally validate for the first time that people want what you have to sell. Like, I don't know if you agree with this, but that those first few months is really just getting that, oh, I get it. It's clicking. People are willing to pay for something that I made. And then from there, you suggest going to more evergreen products or always staying seasonal, or what is the transition?
I mean, we have people that have 20,000 sales on Etsy and they have 5-figure annual shops with all seasonal stuff. And every year they just continue to add to it. And for some of our sellers who they have caregiving responsibilities, they have to take time off for whatever reason, they have busy full-time jobs, like they're super, super happy with that. Then you get other people who they have their own professional businesses and they're just trying to add like a more passive income stream, and or people that have broader goals outside this, then maybe they don't have to move on to try to branch out. Like they could stick it with seasonal. So it really depends on what your overall goals are.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What would you say? I mean, walk me through the journey of how you would try to coach someone into choosing that first seasonal product.
So the harsh reality is for the very first one, done is better than perfect. You just have to get it done. So in our programs, like we'll give you templates and we're like, hey, like literally just make this because you don't know how to use Canva yet and you don't know how to do tags. So like there's copying. But let's say beyond the copying, and by the way, I mean copying, like you're going to make your own spin on it, but you need some handholding. Beyond that though, we, like many of the top Etsy sellers, we use Everbee and eRank and the keyword research tools, and we find a niche down digital product for an upcoming holiday that's like 8 weeks away. And we look on Etsy and figure out what are the top sellers doing, what's the aesthetic. Because with printables, it's super, you got to have the fonts that fit, you got to have the clip art that fits. You can imagine something for a kid's Halloween party is going to look a certain way. The teacher expectation is a certain way. Whereas, okay, this is for a bachelorette party, totally different. This is for a wedding or a modern professional, very different. So make sure that your aesthetic is right from the actual design to the listing image. You create it in Canva and list it, and then figure out what tags the top seller's using. How can I get this shown by the most eyeballs, and you list it. And for the beginning, that's really all you have to do. We've talked offline about ads and such and Pinterest and marketing, but I think for a new seller, using Etsy search is a great starting place.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so you said something actually that I struggle with a lot, the aesthetic. And I think for new people that never did design before, never messed with typography and colors and all that stuff, like I know why something looks really good, but it's like really hard for me to explain it to somebody without hurting their feelings. So how do you deal with that? Like, because a lot of times, we, especially for new designers, you make something and you think it's amazing, but you are only a single data sample and you also made it. So you're biased. But it actually isn't that, it's not that it's not good. It's just not competitive once it's posted on Etsy compared to your competition. So how do you kind of help people that are really, really new, have no design background, catch that aesthetic or train them on that aesthetic, how to see what is something aesthetic that people want to actually buy on Etsy?
So first of all, don't feel bad about it. For some reason, and I might be 99% of our customers are women. A lot of us, we're perfectionists. We got that type A thing, and we refuse to list something that isn't good enough. You just got to list it. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
But ways that you can, because you need that feedback, like I said, you got to keep practicing. You'll get better every time. But one of the ways that you can improve is by picking a less competitive product. So we'll have tons of people come in, and because they saw on YouTube or they heard from other people, well, I want to sell wall art. And it's like, hey, like, let's just think about this. You've never made a printable in your life, and you're going to pick something that needs to be good enough to hang in someone's office. You better pick the bathroom, because you're not office and living room ready right now. If this is your first time ever making a printable. Whereas if you're making a kid's word search for Christmas Eve or something, like, no one's going to care if Santa is the wrong color red compared to the text, like, or, little mistakes that people make. Not making it all matchy is one mistake people make. Weird margins. There's going to be a lot more forgiveness in the latter. So pull yourself out of the competitive game and pick something that is a little more low stakes while you're learning. I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing, the more that you've searched on Etsy, and I think it was Brittany Wolf, she's a print on demand influencer, she was talking about building that mental model. And I'm like, oh, that's such a smart way to think about it. Like, we'll have people that have never really shopped for printables on Etsy, which is fine because most people don't even know that you can even buy printables on Etsy to begin with. And if you've never, if you haven't even spent 15 minutes looking on Etsy for printables, then you don't even know what you're supposed to be doing. Like, what does it look like? So whether you're on Pinterest or whether you're on Etsy, you got to build that mental bank of like, oh, this is what this type of printable looks like. Here's the type of things that people think are popular. Noticing maybe some trends in the printable space. It's not quite like POD where, oh, everyone wants to see groovy or retro or whatever the popular aesthetics are. Although it does blend over a little bit. Sometimes it's more color scheme wise. So, for example, after the Barbie movie came out, every holiday was pink, and that's still the case. So Halloween is pink and Christmas is pink, and you just keep going around the calendar year. So it might more be like a color. And you're not going to know that unless you listen to people like me or other people that talk about it, or you're on Etsy yourself, spending a little bit of time just seeing like what's out there and what are the best listings.
Wow, I love that. And I personally, like, whenever I get asked about design stuff, especially in like the print on demand space or the digital space, like I straight up say, like, I'm not the best person to ask. I always refer out because I don't do it every day. I'm not around it every single day like you. So I love that. And I'm assuming in your program, in your community, I don't know, I'm not assuming, but do you do regular workshops around design and aesthetic and stuff like this? Is that built into kind of like your guys' program?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So we hired 5 or 6 Etsy coaches. So they have thousands and thousands of sales on Etsy. A lot of them were former students of ours over the years. And we're like, hey, we need people that can run regular audits. So we're not limited by the availability of me and Cody. And they get on and they're very nice. Like, these are Etsy sellers are a very nice group. Like, they'll help you out in a very nice way. And really it's about not being afraid. There's 4,000 people in the community. We don't have 4,000 people asking for audits. So part of that is like people get busy, but the other part is people they don't want to put themselves out there. And I know it just feels so uncomfortable, but you have to have someone tell you that your Santa Claus is like off. Like, someone needs to give you that feedback. And it's maybe it stings a little bit, but the quicker you can get there. And then for us, we're all about giving people treats. So when they get to 100 sales, that's like our graduation. Whether it's 100 progress sales with us or their brand new shop 100 sales, we send them a gift in the mail. We celebrate it. It's a huge thing. So we're always like running challenges and stuff to try to get people to that marking.
I love that. Well, do you have any recent success stories or any big aha moments that have happened in the community this year?
I mean, we have people hitting our 100 Sales Club every day. Okay. So I just congratulated a couple people in there. And I think you would be surprised, like, people hit it in lead ups to holidays. Mm-hmm. So I'm not shocked that, we're a couple weeks out from a major holiday and people are hitting it, because we know people start buying things on Etsy way before the holiday. So I think the learning lesson from it is, if you're 6 to 8 weeks before a major holiday, get your listings up. Even if you could start working on the months before, I have seen people sell last minute. Like, for example, for Halloween, I remember somebody posting that they put out a trick or treat sign 1 minute before they left their house, and they ended up making tons of sales. Because at that time, everybody was shopping for the trick or treat sign, and there weren't many people selling it. So in that case, like, you could do last minute, but for the majority of products, people are thinking about them earlier and earlier. And I know, I mean, we all saw the Christmas stuff come out way too early for maybe than some of us wanted in some of the retail stores. And it's the same thing on Etsy. So from what I see, and the learning lesson is just more like get those seasonal products up early.
Wow, I love that. You definitely have a more unique approach than I've heard from like anyone else. So I really like that. And I mean, obviously your students are a testament to that because I mean, you probably have the most students and for good reason. So guys, if you want to check out her community and everything that she's offering, everything is going to be linked below this video. Let's change a little pace. I guess let's get a little bit more personal here, but what would you say is probably like the biggest hardship or something that was really big that you personally had to overcome in your journey in this, either in your coaching life or just in general, in the business landscape, I would say?
I think just the hardest thing, and I'm still having some pandemic trauma because I had a 4-month-old and I was on maternity leave. I launched Gold City Ventures. It was successful. I was wondering, am I going to go back to my job? Am I not? And I got some advice from a fellow entrepreneur saying, we've never seen anything like this. Like, all the influencers that we're working with, the budgets are cut. Like, they're not making sales. Don't leave your job right now. So then I was stuck with a 4-month-old. I hadn't signed up for her daycare, which she probably wouldn't have had it anyways because the pandemic started. And it was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to work at a giant tech company with no childcare for a year. So and it wasn't necessarily a year. It just, a year was all I lasted because it was just so difficult. And oh man, when I talk to people who had kids around that time, like, all of us are just a little bit traumatized from it. And, I look at it now and I'm like, oh, thank God I did that year. And, whether or not, because I think a lot of people, you can't just quit your job and try to do this. Like, you have to work, you have to do everything you need to do. And there were times like when I was pregnant, I was staying up till 2 a.m. and, the second pregnancy, I couldn't text for 3 months. So it's been a journey, but like, don't give up. Yesterday, I went to the aquarium with my kids on a random Tuesday, and it was just so like amazing. And none of that would happen if I didn't push through all these things that happened.
Okay,
So yeah, I would just say, like, I've been through a lot.
Let's repeat this real quick. So, okay, I hang out with my sister and she has 2 kids. I don't have kids. I'm tired and there's 6 of us. So you are working a real job and you had a little baby and you were building your business at the same time.
Yes. And the pandemic, like, without any like friends or outlets to take my mind off it. It was just literally like me and my husband for a while. So it was, when we think about it, we're like, that was not right. Like, that was not good. But at the end of the day, I'm like, that was such a gift because I had a lot of time to focus. And I don't think now I would have had the same time to focus. And it wasn't good, but overall though, it's worked out.
Wow, that is pretty insane. I mean, even just having a business and 2 kids at the same time, I don't know. I was so naive when I was younger. I was like always the girl that was like, oh, I'm going to be this boss. I'm going to have all these kids and it's going to be, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, now I'm like, can I work and have kids? Well, obviously I can because you can. You're doing it.
There's honestly no easy answer. And like, poor Cody, he's also my therapist, and I feel like I've scarred for life because it's just every day is tough. And like, when you have kids, you don't, someone, put them in daycare, you think, or preschool, you think that's going to work. And then they catch some typhoid illness and the whole week is just out. Like, you can't breathe, they can't breathe. It's just, so you never know what's going to happen. So, in some ways it's like, how do I do this? But the other ways I'm like, well, how would I do it any other way? Because at least I have the flexibility. This is my own company and I can cancel, or I can, I can change when I work. I can work at 11 p.m. I can work at 7 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever. And then as everything has grown, like, I have the ability to hire help. So when I had my first daughter, I had no help. And now I got the team. So I got cleaning people. I do meal prep, best thing I've ever done in my whole life. So if you have any extra money to spend someone to cook for you.
Yeah.
And we do, we do all the things, A, B, and C, everything is outsourced. So, and it gives me more time back with my kids because I would rather, if I have more time, I want to spend playing with them and giving them that quality time than cleaning my house or cooking. But I didn't just get there right away. Like, you have to earn your way up to it. and
Right.
make the right choices to get there.
Yeah, and I'm sure you wouldn't wish for it any other way. I'm curious, so who do you listen to? Like what people do you like to like who inspires you?
So when I first got started, I was very deep into financial independence, retire early. So these are people
Mm,
like Mr. Money Mustache or the Mad Fientist. Go Curry Cracker was another. These are huge bloggers. Afford Anything is more of a real estate. Those are the big names in that space. And they taught me how to save your money and invest it. They're not big spenders though. So I feel like there was a certain point that I had to switch to the entrepreneurs, because the entrepreneurs, they're spending money. And me being a mom, like that meal prep dollar, I'm going to make more money in the time that I get back
mm-hmm.
than, like the do-it-yourselfers just doesn't work, particularly for a mom with young kids who wants to start a business, or any young family that wants to start a business. It doesn't work that way.
Mm,
So for me now, I follow the My First Million podcast. I'm in their business membership, Hampton. It's phenomenal.
mm,
Um, and I'm more of like the all-in podcast for geeky tech people that like politics. I wouldn't say I'm like a huge politics person, but like if you want to listen to tech people get in fights about politics, that it's interesting, and it like as an entrepreneur, I don't think you can say, oh, I don't want to listen to politics, because those policies affect our
mm.
day to day. So I somewhat like to stay informed with that. So those are two podcasts that I love right now.
Wow. Well, this is, I mean, I don't know. I'm just blown away. I didn't know all that about you, especially with with running your real job at the same time. I mean, that's just like truly inspiring, because I just think about my life. I mean, I don't have kids now, but I would think that I'm probably gonna have kids here in a couple of years, and I'm like, man, I don't. It stresses me out. But I mean, you're doing it all. You're like the ultimate mom boss, so it is 100% like possible. Because I don't think people like you and me will ever stop. Like we're always hungry. Like like there's no way I could not be an entrepreneur. Let's just put it that way.
No,
And
and
I'm
it's so hard because there's always more, and like sometimes I do get frustrated by how fast I can move. And the crazy thing is, before you have a kid, you may think, "Oh, well, I'm going to make these choices." And then when you have the kid, suddenly you might want something else. Like you might say, "You know what? They're going into daycare." Or you might say, "Oh my gosh, I don't want them in daycare," or whatever. And sometimes you don't really know until you have the kid, or they could have medical issues. Like my first daughter, she was having febrile seizures, which meant every time she got sick, for a period of time, she would have a seizure. And so after that, I'm like, I don't want to put her into a group childcare setting where she's going to get sick all the time. And then I'm going to be constantly anxious and like flipping out. So, you just don't know what's going to happen. But I think this is why, like, it's just amazing to build these flexible online businesses, learn skills, like watch YouTube videos like yours so that you can start building some freedom, because you never know what's going to happen to you or what your life's going to look like. And like, at least if you have choices and you know how to do something other than your full-time job, like you have some flexibility in other avenues you can go down.
Wow. Yeah, I cannot agree more. I cannot agree more with that. Because there is no certainty in your real job. Like my dad, like he's been through like 4 different companies, and it was all because the company went under or they went bankrupt or whatever. Like, so there's no cert. You might as well, like you said, get a skill and learn how to, sculpt your own destiny in a way. But this has been super awesome. All right, we'll wrap this up because I know you have to go. But what is something that you're never going to stop striving for until death stop you?
I think personal development is really important to me. And I think when I was younger, it used to be like, I'm going to travel to a new place, or I'm going to learn a new language or whatever. And for me now, it's not that. We have an Etsy seller in our community. I bought her crochet kit. I'm going to crochet a dog. And I think that's enough for me in this period of life. Like if I can even start this project, I'm going to be so happy. If there's a dog on my desk by like the holidays, I'll be pumped. That's more it. So, and my husband's the same way, but he's more like health and fitness. So I think together we're going to constantly be trying to learn something new and just
Yeah.
continue to improve ourselves.
Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Julie. Make sure you guys check her out, her community, her links down below. And yeah, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have you back on here soon. And yeah,
Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye bye.